nonsensical conversations. Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's Owen, and welcome back to today's report. Today's report was sent in by Joe. When this happened, 2020, the drugs used, Diphenhydramine, at a dose of 1200 milligrams. The route administration, orally, gender, male, weight, 145 pounds, age, 18. Hers prior experience, diphenhydramine use, from doses 200 to 900 milligrams and more, and the setting, at home. Okay, so back with another diphenhydramine report. This report is kind of like a preview for Deliriant week, not just because it's DPH, but because we'll actually be covering Joe's follow-up report to this during Delirium week, where Joe ends up getting more bizarre. But in this report, Joe tells of a time he casually took 1200 milligrams of DPH, his highest dose yet. He's had a good amount of experience with it leading up to this, but this still ended up being his strongest trip yet. It gets to the point where he can barely remember anything and interacts with various auditory and visual hallucinations. He ends up in some loops, doing the same thing over and over again, and eventually this garners the attention of his parents, where he then can barely get a hold of himself. And one thing I do want to know from this trip is that Joe does say at this dose he was too dysphoric to care about the physical side effects, which could be a real blind negative when taking these high doses. But either way, Joe ends up really messed up, and this just sets up well what's to come in his next report. I'm sure you enjoyed this, so without further ado, let's dive right into it. I apologize in advance if there's a lack in detail. I don't remember much from this trip besides the general concepts, and I wasn't able to keep track of time because I was too delirious. I'll start by saying this. I hate how diphenhydramine feels. I am fascinated and intrigued by delirium, but the body load and dry mouth are quite dysphoric, which is why I used to stay away from this stuff. After dosing, I sat and watched TV, waiting for the effects to kick in. I knew the trip was starting when I got the familiar dry mouth, accompanied by a weightless feeling that would soon turn into feeling like gravity multiplied by several times. The DPH static started setting in, and I would notice small ripples in my vision as well as objects flickering or pulsating. I was used to this by now, as I had taken DPH several times, ranging from 250 milligrams to 900 milligrams, but for some reason, 1200 milligrams must have been the perfect dose. I eventually became too delirious to notice or care about the dry mouth or heavy feeling. It was at this point that I decided to go to my room. This is where things get blurry. I decided to turn the lights off in an attempt to enhance the hallucinations, and just sat there. Sure enough, when I focused on my office chair, it started rocking back and forth violently. For some reason, this scared me, and I decided to look away. When I stared off into my closet, I noticed my friend Jackson hitting what I thought was a dab pen. He looked at me, smiled, and motioned for me to come closer to him. I was hesitant at first, knowing my mind was playing tricks on me, but figured, if it's real, I'll get more high. If it's not, nothing bad will happen. So I got up and started walking towards my closet, only to realize Jackson was actually just a dress shirt hanging on the wall. I remember talking to myself throughout the night, hearing voices and responding to them, having conversations. I couldn't for the life of me remember what they were about, but just knew it was happening. I do remember at one point responding to one of the voices saying "la moo," as in LMAO. I guess I must have thought it was something funny, but couldn't laugh due to the tightness in my throat. There were several times where I would turn to notice my mom or someone else in my room, and I would talk to them for a bit, thinking nothing of it. But I would always end up turning around and turning back to see they were gone, without hearing my door open and close. What was probably the funniest part of the trip was when one of my dealers came into my room and sold me weed. Then I remember putting it down, looking away, then looking back to see it gone. I then proceeded to search my room for what was probably 30 minutes, but felt like hours. It took forever to realize that there was no weed, and that I didn't even have money in the first place. When I would get up to go to the bathroom, I would reach for my door handle, and my hand would go straight through it. It took me at least 5 to 10 minutes to figure out how to open it. After my 4th time going to the bathroom, my mom came up to me and asked me who I was talking to. Not realizing I had been talking to myself, I just said, "I don't know." That's when I knew I was fucked. She woke up my dad, and they came into my room to talk to me. Every time I get caught on a hard substance, my parents sit down and tell me why I shouldn't do it, how they don't want it in the house, and all that stuff. Of course, I would forget what I was saying in the middle of saying it over and over again, and would try to remember it and continue what I was saying. Except after, I would pause to remember what I was trying to say, then I would just start speaking about something else. I don't remember anything else from the trip myself. All I remember is my mom saying, "We spent over an hour trying to talk to you, having all sorts of nonsensical conversations. You even tried smoking your blanket." I don't know what she meant by that, but I do know, while it wasn't the most fucked up I had ever been, it was the most fucked up my parents had seen me at that point. I hope this report was at least somewhat amusing. Again, I apologize for the foggy details. Lastly, I'd like to say I don't condone the recreational use of diphenhydramine. This is not a drug that should be taken lightly. It's very intense and very dangerous.